The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you for joining the Promark and Zadara webinar today. My name is Kelly Berg, Senior Marketing Manager at Promark Technology. This webinar will last approximately 45 minutes. In terms of general housekeeping, your lines have been muted for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to type your question in the Q&A box on your screen. Questions will be addressed at the conclusion of the webinar. Thank you everyone for joining us, and now I'll hand things over to the Zadara team. Please take it away.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Sean Yakeley, and I am the Senior Director for Zadara for North America for our channel and MSP solution group. With me today are Greg Newman, who is our Senior Director for Marketing, as well as Kirk Jenkins, who's one of our Senior Solution Architects who's going to be engaged. We want to make sure that this is somewhat interactive, so please take advantage of the questions box and ask questions as it's going on, and they will either reach out and chime in, or I will be able to try to answer some questions. And at the end, we will certainly go through and kind of go through as many questions as we can possible. So again, thank you for your time today, and we'll go ahead and get started. So again, Sean Yakeley and Kirk Jenkins. And this is what we wanted to highlight for you all today. You know, my background just a little bit, and hopefully this kind of hits on what we're looking at. I ran a VAR for 7 years, and when I was looking for solutions and products that I was looking for my clients, there were several things that I specifically looked at. Number one, did it solve a customer's business and technical needs? Number two, where could I make good margin on it? And a third critical piece of that, where was their drag along services, drag along other solutions? This was very key for us. And then the other piece, as the market changed over the years, you know, what I called the golden egg, which was recurring revenue. So we only have a few selling it, and the other key thing was having only a few people in a given region that I was competing against. So there weren't a bunch of people who had the solution, that I wasn't competing against a bunch of different people, but having one solution in a group, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Before I joined Zadara, I also was the chief strategist over at HP for about 5.5 years. Zadara's been around since 2011, so we're certainly far from a startup, but it is rather interesting because, you know, I kind of chuckle, it's one of those great unknown entities in the market. Specifically, we got started with a group of execs who had all worked for EMC, NetApp, HP, IBM, and companies like that, with literally centuries of expertise in the storage industry. And originally, where we focused on was in the cloud. And if you think about it, 9 years ago, there was only two real players. There was AWS and there was Rackspace. So we came out with solutions and capabilities that would allow us to be able to meet the needs in their environment. So we had better security, better performance, and about 20, 30 different additional features and capabilities in their cloud that they didn't have at the time. That continued on, and then the biggest thing that changed probably around 4 or 5 years ago is we had clients who said, look, we love the idea of the cloud, scale up, scale down, performance on demand, storage on demand, but their applications and databases were never going to put out in the cloud. So we came up with what's called on-premise as a service. So today, just about every vendor out there has storage as a service as a line item. Everybody talks about it. But we're the only true consumption model in the market. And I would contend we're the only true storage as a service in the entire market. We don't just scale up, we also scale down. We do it based on actual consumption, and there's not the typical unique financing, which is how many of them do that. In terms of profitability, in terms of the growth of the company, we've been growing 40% annually year over year. So it's a very viable company. And our goal is to be 100% go-to-market through the channel and through our partners. And this is really our focus. To that end, some of the leading service providers in the market are using our solution internally as well as selling it to their end users. We've won a bunch of awards, and certainly you can go online and look at those. But you know, customers want to buy storage as a service. And when you look at it, we really run the gamut from any type of business and industry and vertical as well. Literally from some of the biggest companies in the world down to mom and pops that are being serviced by a managed service provider, for example, in their colo. Today, if you look at the market, there really are many things going on. Big data and analytics is something that has obviously been exploding and continues to. And once again, this is one, it used to be larger companies were looking at it in general, and that's been moving down the scale constantly because companies have realized their data is their life. So being able to do analytics against it was critical. Obviously, storage isn't going away. Everybody has more data, and if anything, they want to be able to keep it longer. At the same time, focusing on areas like backup and recovery and disaster recovery as a service. So from a service provider, from a VAR perspective, these are huge opportunities and big challenges in the market that you all can come out and meet. What's unique about it is that you can do this on-premise, in a data center, or in the public or private cloud. You become a true value-added reseller and a real advisor to them to look at what is their business need rather than saying, well, technology will drive what we're doing instead. So what if you could offer your customers the control of enterprise storage with cloud agility and economics? That's literally what we do. This is not a gateway. This isn't a software overlay. This is tier 1, high availability, mission critical storage. And it's in a very highly profitable recurring revenue stream. And we're going to talk more about that as we go through it today. What your clients are demanding, it's really shifting. If you look at all the different layers in the stack, customers expect data to be delivered in a data service. It used to be the technology defined how we were bringing that to market, so you build your business around the technology. Businesses are realizing it needs to be just the opposite. We are going to drive the business will drive what technology needs. To that end, IT as a service, including enterprise storage, has very much been a growing area. Taking advantage of this new model, it requires expertise and investment. Zadara is the perfect partner to be able to do this because we're going to talk a good bit about this today. We reduce your risk, both from an actual financial risk and a technological risk. When you look at storage as a service, what do you need to have? It has to be fully featured. It needs to be fully elastic and fully managed. This is the reason people like looking at the cloud, right? That's why it took off over the last 9-10 years. We're able to give that same model on premise. What's truly unique in terms of the enterprise class performance and security, for example, we have SSDs, HDD, and object storage all in one. And we're going to talk more about that today. So now you can offer your clients, or in your own environment, any data type with any protocol in any location. So in one solution, you have block, file, and object. You have fiber channel, iSCSI, and ISER. And we can do CIFS, NFS, NAS, file, block, as I just mentioned, all in one. And you can do this in the customer site. You can do this in a public or private cloud, and you can do that in the hybrid. We are the hybrid cloud. And the other big thing is we're the bridge to the public cloud, which we'll talk about here in just a bit. Our patented technology lies in our multi-tenant efficiency with single-tenant experience. This is the difference from everybody else in the market. Today, everybody else's multi-tenancy is done at the software and controller layer. Ours is done at the physical layer at the drive, which I'm going to show you here in just a couple slides. But again, we can do file, block, and object all in one solution, so that now you can meet the needs of not just individual clients, but you can even go down to individual projects, individual departments. I have several states right now, they're rolling this out, and they're going to offer this out to their agencies for primary storage as well as backup and DR as a service, for example. These are all very viable options. And that ability to do file, block, and object in one has a tremendous cost savings because now you can do true tiered data storage. Now this slide's an eyesore, I'm not going to go through all of it, but we're going to share this with you so you'll have this availability. In fact, you could even print this out as you're talking to potential clients in the future. But again, I hit on it because it's become kind of a misnomer. Everybody talks about storage as a service now, every vendor out there. But when you look at the fine detail of it, what's the contract? What are they on the line? Does it scale up and shrink? Will they actually take back physical hardware? We do all of that. A couple key things too, 100% uptime guarantee. You're able to pass this along in your contract to your clients when they're utilizing our solution for their storage. It includes all software, firmware, hardware, maintenance support, 24/7 proactive support. So this isn't just a call home feature. This is unique to Zadara. And a big thing is that with the physical isolation at the drive layer, as well as the unique way we do our snapshots, it's a fantastic solution for protection from ransomware, and it's perfect for big data and analytics, for example. The financial benefits: no upfront capital expense. There's no over provisioning. You don't have the assets sitting there. In fact, what we'll do is take the risk by shipping. Say you needed 100 terabyte for a client. We actually are going to ship you more like 125, maybe more than that can grow into it, but they're only paying for actual utilization. The chargeback tools are about as granular as I've ever seen in the business in 25 years of doing storage, and I'm going to show you a couple examples in a bit. Operational benefits: again, 24/7 proactive support. You don't have to have a Zadara storage specialist on hand. This becomes a tremendous cost savings in terms of your own internal. And it's not saying, to get rid of anybody, but use your solution architects, your storage architects, for more strategic decisions, not day-to-day operations, seeing what drive failed, what's going on here and there. We manage all that for you. And there's no refresh cycle. I can't tell you how many CIOs I've talked to over the years, and the idea that they wouldn't have to do a refresh again was absolutely a huge deal. Because I don't care if you stay on the same vendor, it's never smooth, right? There's always, it's on the weekend, holidays, and it never goes as easily as they say it does. Ours was designed from the ground up based on software-defined storage so that literally everything can be replaced and upgraded without downtime. And then again, any location, data, and protocol, we are that foundation for the cloud, because you can now go into any of the public cloud providers. But the big one there, we break the handcuffs for the exorbitant fees for the egress fees. That's been a very, in fact, when we first got started 9 years ago, that was probably one of the biggest value adds. AWS is still one of our biggest partners, but I'll say it's co-opetition. They love us that we're in some of their biggest clients because of our additional features and capabilities in their cloud. They don't like that we give the client the choice of moving out. And then scalable and elastic. We're not only just scalable, because mini storage can do that, they can compound, but that ability of having elasticity at both the performance layer and the actual disk layer becomes extremely valuable. To that end, we have all storage in a single service data type protocol. And Kirk, I'll hand it over to you to kind of go through and talk, some, especially our integrated data services and things like that.
Okay, thanks, Sean. So we work with all the use cases on the bottom of the slide. Like Sean said, we have file, block, and object all in the same stack at the same time. And then on top of that, we integrate the best of breed data services like McAfee for antivirus, Veeam, Commvault, and Asigra for backups, and VMware and Docker containers, so that we can provide a fully functional data storage environment that our customers and our partners can take advantage of to offer unique services to their customers. So like Sean said, we can be on premise, we can be in a co-location facility, as well as cloud adjacent to the hyperscaler providers. So like Sean said, we can do all the block, file, object on the Zadara cloud at the same time. So within the virtual private storage array, our standard array with block and file, we have AES 256 encryption, a 40 gig, 40/100 gig network on the back end, and we support Docker. So we can support Fiber Channel, iSCSI, NFS, CIFS on a standard VPSA storage array. On the object storage, we support S3 and Swift, 2- and 3-way data protection, as well as error correction on larger infrastructures. We can support multiple accounts. Each account can have multiple buckets that they manage. And it is an auto scale out type of model. So as you add more drives, we will provide additional virtual controllers to continue to scale the interface. And aside for adding drives, you don't have to really consider scaling your controller environment. And then lastly, we support an all-flash environment. So we can support all NVMe SSD drives. We utilize SCM NVMe cache, which includes dedupe and compression. We get really good dedupe and compression rates. And since we use an SCM layer, we treat the NVMe drives very, very well, and they tend to last a long time. VPSA are dual switch infrastructure, supports 40 and 100 gig on the back end. We support 10, 25, 40, 50 gig on the front end. We can support layer 2 or layer 3 switching. In our environment, we always support at least 2 storage nodes, redundant networking, so there are no single points of failure. Within this cluster, we can provision drives up to the capacity of the node. We support 16, 24, and 36 drive bay nodes, and we can scale and mix and match any flavor of node in a configuration, so we can scale up seamlessly, non-disruptively, and even if there are drive failures or node failures, the system will remain up and running and have your data available. We also include a management switch and firewall. This allows our operations team to monitor the environment, make software upgrades, also make recommendations around performance and capacity. So if a customer is running out of capacity, we keep an eye on that, and we will inform the customer and or the partner, hey, they're running out of storage. Can we ship you more storage? And we also utilize that 1 gig infrastructure for a redundant heartbeat network. So we are a very multi-tenant environment, so we can support multiple tenants on the same infrastructure, and they don't suffer from the noisy neighbor issue because we dedicate drives, cores, memory to each one of those customers. So within the virtual private storage array, we utilize standard off-the-shelf x86 servers, high capacity nearline SAS drives, as well as leading edge SSD drives, 40, 100 gig networking on the back end, as well as a very efficient software-defined networking. So within a virtual private storage array, if a customer wants to come in and configure their own storage, they can utilize our public portal, go in and choose an engine, which is simply the virtual controller, how many cores will be dedicated to that, and choose the number of drives that fits the capacity that they need. We do RAID 1. Initially, we can support RAID 6, but that part of the configuration is relatively well known. So a customer like the first one can choose all SSD drives, stand up the engine that they need for that kind of performance, and those drives will be dedicated to that customer. On top of that, the customer can encrypt those drives with an AES 256 key, and that customer keeps the key. We don't have access to it, only the customer has access to it. So if they lose the key, essentially they lock themselves out of their data pool. So the second customer can come in, unbeknownst to the first customer, they have no idea anybody else is in the environment. They can stand up their own virtual private storage array, choose their own engine, a higher performance engine, and choose spinning disk drives and or cache on top of that. So any of the white drives in the environment can be added to any of the virtual private storage array to increase capacity at any time. Also, our system is self-healing, so if a drive fails, the system will automatically grab a spare drive and start rebuilding the system immediately. Of course, the administrators and the operations teams are notified of that failure, and our operations team will send out a spare drive to replace a failed drive. Another advantage of our environment, Sean, if you can go to the next slide, is that we do offer this 7x24 monitoring. So like Sean said, we support the infrastructure so your team doesn't have to. We get notifications, we keep an eye on capacity and performance, and we will make recommendations to the partners or the customers that they're running out of capacity. We can advise on best ways, best practices to increase performance. And when they get to the 70% capacity realm, we will send out more storage automatically at no cost to the customer. So our DevOps team is the best in the field, and we will support all environments 7x24 with 100% uptime guarantee.
And to that end, we have sites actually around the globe. This is showing our larger public sites around the world that have been in some of the different locations that we're at. Besides that, we actually have thousands of VPSAs all over the world. And what's unique about it is that we're building out basically a federated ecosystem, because Zadara can talk to Zadara and move data between any of these sites. So instead of going out saying, I want my data here, I want my data there, what if you could geographically put your data where you need it, when you need it, have that ability to have it on premise at your client site, to have it in any service provider colo, and as I mentioned earlier, it is the bridge out to the public cloud. To that end, these are actual clients, and this is exactly what they're doing. They'll have it on premise at their locale. We have built-in replication so they can go out to a colo site and then via direct connect, express route, direct peering, go into the cloud providers. The big difference here is you don't pay the exorbitant egress fee to get the data back out. We break the handcuffs. Now you'd still use them for doing your day-to-day, application operations, those type of thing, but the storage would sit with us, so it gives them significantly better flexibility. One of the big things, especially with what's going on right now in worldwide, it's not just OpEx, CapEx, and this is designed as an operating expense solution, but the big deal right now is cash flow. And I'm sure it is for your own company, let alone for your clients. So this is one of the biggest values that Zadara has always brought to market, but it's really come out more. It's not, you're able to now control your data and your costs by freeing up the cash flow. Zadara matches actual utilization. Even if you did legacy storage over time and you financed it, there's a massive amount of wasted spend in space if you have a decrease in the amount of data set, or one of the great examples, say somebody said, I need all flash arrays. Well, if indeed 80% or more of applications and databases in the world don't need over 50,000 IOPS, why do you throw an all flash array at it? What if I could give you all flash while you need it, get the performance you need, but then transfer the data back down to SATA drives at significantly lower cost? So one way to think of our VPSA, it's the equivalent really in some ways of having a customizable SAN on the fly, scale up and down, and you never have overused or unused capacity. And these are actual real numbers. I mean, if you look at a CapEx and a lease, even cloud services, Zadara is less than all of these. And the irony of this slide, this is if technology never changes. The green line will continue to get flatter. Kirk had hit on this, but I'll reiterate it. We upgrade the technology when the latest and greatest technology becomes available. So that becomes a significant cost savings. Last year was a great example. We started with 800 gigabyte SSDs. We then went to 1.6, then to 4, and now 8 terabyte SSDs. The cost went down over 38% and the capacity increased, what is that, 6x over. So this gives significant value add while you still own the solution. If you think of any other vendor out there, when do you get the latest and greatest features? When you buy the new one. We changed the entire business model. And candidly, this is a phenomenal opportunity for you all as a reseller and a service provider, because you can either pass that cost savings along or your margin goes up. The ability the control your customers crave and you all need to have, right? Analytics, performance metrics, that visibility to what's going on. This is what I talked about where in all my years of being in storage, I've never seen this detail out of anybody. It at least shows the reads, writes, snapshot encryption, what performance was chosen, what drive, even mix of drives, how many hours in the month to the penny. Imagine now being able to do this by department, by agency, by project. This was the gold mine when I had an MSP to be able to figure this out, because especially when we were doing backup and DR as a service, we had to go into Commvault or go into Veeam or Zerto to figure out what was being carved out at the file level. This kind of changed the whole paradigm when I could do it by department, by project, or even by end user client. You never run out of capacity. This is the other great thing. It's not an all or nothing solution. In reality, probably 99.9% of our clients already have storage, had somebody else when they started looking at us and then joined Zadara. We can come in and get started as small as a 2U form factor. And that's for roughly somewhere between 50 to 70 terabyte usable, and then it goes up from there. As Kirk mentioned, when you hit 70 to 80% utilization on those initial 2 nodes, we ship you another and another and another at 0 cost. My joke's always been, I'd love, to call up your NetApp rep or EMC or Pure or Nimble and say, hey, you know what? I need another shelf. I need another set of drives. And they say, okay, great. How much you need? I was like, well, this is what I need. It's like, okay, well, send me a PO. I was like, no. I want you to ship it to me. And then if I use it, I'll pay for it. That's literally our business model. And this is for on-premise. In the cloud, there's not even a minimum configuration that you have to use locally. I mentioned this earlier, but this is very key. In the market, we have 5.9 is our SLA. That is our high availability. Reality of actual installation since the first one we shipped 9 years ago, we're 5.96. We're almost 6 nines of high availability. This is mission critical tier 1 storage. And we put our money where our mouth is. We have 100% money back and uptime guarantee that we can talk more about as we go through this. And you're able to pass that along to your clients. That SLA is very key, and obviously the value add you bring to them. I'm going to let Kirk kind of go through. We have a very unique solution set with Veeam, and I'm just using it as an example. Again, we work with Commvault, Backup Exec, Zerto, you name it. We're agnostic, but there are some very fundamental feature set with Veeam that has become a huge value add in the market. And Kirk, if you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So the reason Veeam really likes us as a premier partner is that we can address all the storage needs for their backup environment. Not only can we do production storage, but we can be the performance tier for their initial backup. We can be the secondary backup copy, either on-prem or in the cloud. And we can be the long-term scale-out backup repository on our object store. Another real key benefit with the version 10 of Veeam is that they allow for immutability on the object tier. So this highly scalable tier can be locked down so that the backup objects cannot be modified or deleted for a retention period. That retention period could be anywhere from 7 days to many years. And as long as that retention period is active on that object, it cannot be changed or deleted. And that thus protects you from ransomware type events where all of your primary storage, your backup repositories have the potential to be encrypted and locked away from your use. So this benefits our customers by being able to quickly resolve ransomware issues. So the reason Veeam really likes us is because we are the bridge to the cloud. We can be a pure hybrid OpEx type model that they can benefit by having multiple tenants spread across multiple sites wherever it makes the most sense for the customer to store their data. And like Sean said, we are in data centers all across the globe. So it's rare that we don't have storage available in a location that our customers can utilize the Veeam V10 backup and immutability feature. And then over the next coming weeks, a week from today, we're having a webinar on Veeam backup for Office 365. Not a lot of customers realize that their Office 365 environments are not being backed up by Microsoft. So it is a good idea to utilize Veeam as an Office 365 backup provider. And we can get into that a lot more in depth next week. And then in a couple weeks, we have another webinar that we're setting up all around the ransomware issue and the immutability of the Zadara object storage that Veeam takes advantage of. So we'll get into the nuts and bolts of how that works in a couple weeks. So the value proposition around Veeam and Zadara is that we can address their performance tier, their second copy tier, their offsite, and immutable storage object tier. We have a flexible hybrid model, so pay for only what you need to use, scale up, scale down, depending on your backup environment. We can do rapid, near instant recovery of data, and the availability to change the technology as advancements come out in the marketplace, and then we can deploy them within our environment for Veeam to take advantage of.
If you look at the market, as it is today, as a service, that whole concept is really exploding across technology. Specific to storage, these are actual numbers. This is what's been going on in the market and where it's trending, based on IT Brand Pulse. And for those of you in the traditional reseller, you've seen it. I look at what the market was just 5 years ago, let alone 10 or 15. It's exponentially decreased. Clients are more and more looking at going to the cloud, or at least offloading. The margins that people are making on the solution from a reseller perspective are shrinking more and more. And the beauty of it, Zadara sits right in that area that's growing significantly. Private cloud storage OpEx and public cloud storage OpEx. So it fits perfect into both those areas. 451 did some research, went out and talked to a bunch of CIOs and executives. And there's a strong preference for OpEx and slight preference for OpEx versus CapEx. Now, I will make this caveat. There are some industries that are still very much, hey, they want to be able to buy it, own it, and amortize it. But it's interesting, two of those in particular, and I'll just tell you, one of them is the cable industry, right? And telecommunications, because that's what they're used to. Even that group's realizing, wait a minute, if I can free up cash flow and literally be able to go in and say, I'll free up $25 million in working capital for you, that becomes a very compelling conversation. And the ability to leverage other people's expertise. You don't have to be an expert in everything you do. So reducing your product service staff in terms of leveraging third-party suppliers is one of the biggest things they're actually looking at. It's not laying people off, but it's use your own personnel much more efficiently. So the bottom line is this is a true profitable partnership. And these are some numbers. Now, this is your cost, is with the example we're giving, but tier 1 all flash, we can come in starting right around 5 cents a gigabyte. Tier 2, 3 cents, that's with caching, and we have up to 3.2 terabyte of cache behind our SSDs. So I made that comment earlier. If indeed 80% plus of applications and databases don't need over 50,000 IOPS, if I can meet that performance on SATA drives with caching, that becomes exponentially better pricing. Traditional day-to-day, SATA storage, and then object storage. And this is for 100 terabyte kind of environments, the example we're giving. We can get down to fractions of a cent in our object storage, for example, when we get up in the petabytes. We are cheaper than S3. I mean, there's a great example. So you guys, I'll tell you, to me, it's the multi-billion-dollar business opportunity, because that's how much they make in AWS, for example, and S3 and Glacier. It's in the tens of billions. You could offer object storage, so think deep archive and long-term storage needs. And this business model was designed for service providers. We match the actual funding. You don't have to go out and make a massive capital investment to be able to go and have it. We'll match the actual utilization versus legacy storage where you make an educated guess about how much storage you're going to need. We're going to be able to match the actual use and the clients. And say you had a client, and I'm sure this is happening for every one of you on the phone today. You're having some clients who are worried their business may not be around. So they may not be a paying client. It isn't that you have a contract with them, there is nobody to go after. So being able to match that and actually do true shrink on the use, the other vendors aren't going to take back the hardware. We actually do. This is a true consumption model. We take the risk. Zadara bears that risk in this business model. This is really important to understand for your clients if they have it on premise, or for yourselves if you're doing this as a managed service provider. Fully managed service, it's not a lease. This is really important because it's, proverbial, it's in the details. Others have storage as a service, everybody else out there. But when you really get down in the fine details, it's often creative financing. This ability to do block, file, and object in one solution, to do true tiered data storage, that's a huge value add. So let's look at the Zadara Service Provider Program. What were the things I mentioned at the very beginning when I ran a reseller? Number one, it solved a business and technical need. Hopefully that's come across today. There's a reason that we have some of the biggest companies in the world using us. Tons of federal, state, SLED, as well as private industry companies are using Zadara. From a partner perspective, what was the second one? Where could I make money? This is 30-point plus margin. For where you use it as a service, or you're selling it out as an MSP, this is a 60 to 75 point plus solution. I know because I've got a bunch of my friends who still out and own some channel and reseller partners, and it sounds like no different than it was even 15, 20, 30 years ago. Margins keep getting skinnier. They keep saying, oh, we'll give you some money on the backside. For me, how do you keep the lights on? How do I pay for what I have today? That's exactly what Zadara brings to market. 30-point plus margin, plus the ability of taking that 65, 70 point margin with services and other added value. This was an actual partner of ours who started July, as you can see, just a year and a half ago. They started at just around $1,200, I think it was $1,400 actually, maybe $1,500 a month. This is how quickly to scale in just 18 months to over $170,000 recurring revenue. This isn't a one-time sale. This is the golden egg. These are some clients, and I want to just give you a handful real quick, of some companies. The partner was Dimension Data, and they had Deloitte. And Deloitte basically came in and they want to be able to have flexibility to scale up and down, basically create a cloud environment, private cloud, but needed that in a secure environment, so they weren't going to go out and look at the public clouds. That's exactly what we were able to give them for their financial institution. It was a couple of very large banks that they were managing, and that ability to have physical isolation at the drive layer was the key differentiator. It was literally the equivalent of giving each of their clients their own SAN, but they had got the economy of scale of having a multi-tenant environment. Lumentum, I can now say this, I couldn't for a couple of years, but the chip that's in every single iPhone out there is made by this company, Lumentum. Lumentum thought they were going to be generating what was 328 megabyte a second of data, because what happened is, and I contend it was because of the Samsung phones that caught on fire, they wanted a video of every single chip coming off the line. Long story short, they missed it by a 2 to 3x. They were now generating, they thought they were going to generate about a petabyte of data a month. It turned out to be 3. They had to move the data from on-premise, where they were taking every chip coming off the manufacturing line was getting videoed. Then they want to be able to do analytics against those and random testing from the images. And then they wanted to back that off to S3 and ultimately off to Glacier. And this was across the Pacific Ocean. This was exactly what we were able to give them, and we were the only solution. In fact, AWS themselves couldn't do this, and or Azure, and Google actually talked to them too. They could not ingest it at the speed that they needed it. So this was a critical difference that was able to win this deal with CenturyLink, actually with this client, Momentum. TUI is actually a large university, technical university, and when you look at their OpEx billing model, allowed them by department, because quite often in the educational space and universities, each department or each college within it kind of runs its own little ship, but they always knew that they'd have better economy of scale if they could combine those and have central IT be more valuable. That, by the way, is what's going on with a lot of states. That, and then the tie-in with their VMware in their VDI environment was a huge value add. We have great synergy with both VMware and VDI and those type of things where it's performance intensive. So from a perspective, you know, when you're looking at, and I'll just make this statement, I have not seen the list of who signed up today, who's looking at it, but I bet I hit 100% of you with this comment. You all need another product to sell like a bloody hole in the head. You don't. In fact, most of you probably are already selling storage. So you've got storage, you're making good money on it, you've got good relationships, so why in the world would I want to bring something else in? I'm biased because I work here, but the reality of it is, when I've looked at the business model, especially after my 5.5 years at HP, I was there during the acquisition of 3PAR and Nimble. This is kind of at the next extreme. If I can match my technology to match my business with guaranteed margins, guaranteed uptime, all the thing, we take on the risk for you, it makes it much more cost effective and profitable. Obviously, we do demand generation, these type of things with you. We do co-branding, all the typical things you see with a partnership, co-op funding, those type of things. And it's very easy to become a partner. Go to Zadara.com. And like I said, we're going to send out some information afterwards, so you don't have to worry about writing this down now. We have a team across North America that we're involved, and we kind of do it by regions, working with you all. And that's kind of the end. Are there some questions? I think I saw some that if you have questions, please go in and you can click under questions and write what you're looking for. I know one of the questions that came across, they were saying, when you talk about the ability to have SSD, SATA, and object, do you all have auto tiering and leveling? We do not, and I actually can speak to that from my own personal history. I sold Hitachi back in its day when they used to have the lightning and thunder. So for those of you who've been in the industry a while now, you know how long I have. It was a pretty cool feature, but Murphy was absolutely correct. It would move the application in the database right before somebody actually needed it. So we absolutely have that capability to do true tier data storage, but we would much rather have you all have the capability to define that from the storage administrator standpoint or from the business standpoint. We do have CLIs and APIs, so you can set up scripts, you can set up, hey, if this hasn't been touched the next number of days or weeks or whatever, we can move it. So that works out really well. From a partner perspective, I think I hit on this, but I'll reiterate that somebody's asking the question, you know, how your go-to-market vision. This comes from the chairman of the board and everybody on down. Our go-to-market is 100% channel through our MSPs and traditional VAR partners. That is how we are looking at doing this. And the ability to do that is how we bring both leads to you and obviously work with you with your clients. But I think the key point too, we're not looking to go boil the ocean. We're almost doing the antithesis of every other vendor I know out there. I mean, not to hit on anybody, and I'll just be nice. I won't say any names, but there are companies you know that darn well right down the street there's another reseller selling the exact same product, right? I'm setting up a team, we're doing the antithesis. I literally want to find just a handful in an entire region and then make them successful, put our energy and efforts into making you successful, go to market that way. So we're very much focused on trying to go after what you all need and make you have a competitive differentiator with technology for your clients and for your business needs. Seeing if there are any other questions here. An example of dedupe and compression, do I pay for the effective capacity or the physical capacity? That's a great question. Kirk, you want to take that one?
Sure. So you pay for the provision capacity, any of the realized dedupe and compression, because it can be very variable depending on the workload, but you will be paying for the provision capacity even if you realize more effective capacity.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully, if nothing else, it was very interesting and kind of gave you something else to think about. We're very excited to work with our Promark team and Ingram to come out and talk with you all more about our partnership and more about the technology, how it might fit within and have a synergy within what else you're bringing to market. And if there are no further questions, this will end the presentation.